Hi, this is David Unsworth, English editor of the PanAm Post. Today we'll be speaking with Slobodan Franeta. Slobodan Franeta is an economist from Montenegro. He's president and co-founder of the Lucha Institute, a new think tank with the aim of promoting limited government, laissez-faire capitalism, and individual liberty. He is also co-founder of Montenegrin Students for Liberty. His primary work is oriented towards the role of government in education and promoting free markets. Slobodan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, David, for having me.
So, as you probably know, the PanAm Post is, we're largely focused on Latin America, particularly Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, the United States, Cuba, and so forth. And our audience probably isn't too familiar with Montenegro. And one of the most interesting things about Montenegro, it's one of the newest countries in the world. I think it's actually the second youngest country in the world after South Sudan. How did Montenegro come into existence, and tell us about the independence process?
Yes, generally Montenegro received its independence in 2006, which is now 11 years ago. There was one referendum that was unsuccessful in 90s when Montenegro also wanted to get their independence from Serbia, but it was unsuccessful, and 10 years later Montenegro received it on a referendum that was held in May 2006. At that time, 55% of the citizens of Montenegro voted yes for leaving association with Serbia, which was the requirement from the all international organization. I think it was one of the very rare cases where 55% of the voters were needed to get independence.
And what is the relationship today between Serbia and Montenegro? Montenegrins are largely Serbian, correct?
Well, in general, there are a lot of Serbians. There are a lot of people who declare themselves as Serbians, but also now at this moment, I think there are a lot of people who declare themselves as Montenegrins, as they now feel the spirit of Montenegro, and they declare them as their nationality Montenegrin.
And what is?
In general, yes.
Oh, I was just going to ask, what is the relationship today between the government of Montenegro and the government of Serbia?
Well, I could say that those two are cooperating in most fields, and that I think mostly you can see it in tourism, as Montenegro's most important branch in economics is tourism, but also in trade, as a lot of products from Serbia you can find in Montenegro, and a lot of products from Montenegro you can find in Serbia, especially when it comes to beverage, because in Montenegro is very famous by its beers and wines, and those are products that are very popular in Serbia. So in those, I could say that they have a pretty stable relationship, and that it's based on cooperation between those countries.
Do the two nations have a free trade agreement?
Well, at this moment, not, but there is an initiative for all Western Balkans countries to have free trade deal, something similar to the European Union. And this is something that I hope it will become reality, and that in the next few years we will trade without barriers. It's very important to remove them because I think that can stimulate the growth in all countries, and definitely it could be very usable for Montenegro, as Montenegro is a really small country, and its economy is mostly open. So in general, it would be a great move for all countries, but especially for Montenegro.
What was Montenegro's role traditionally in Yugoslavia, and what role did it play in the 90s as Yugoslavia dissolved into numerous individual republics?
Well, mostly I would say it was a touristic center of Yugoslavia. and it was very popular, not by Yugoslavs but also of Eastern and Western civilizations, and it always because Montenegro has that access to the Adriatic coast, which is very beautiful, and there is also some mix in nature. Mostly people who are coming here and people who are living are calling it wild beauty because there is a mix of great beaches and rocks and mountains. So in general, I think the main role of Montenegro was as touristic place. But what is also important to note, to say, is that Montenegro, during the wars in the Western Balkan countries, was one of the countries that was maybe the most peaceful, because they tried to, because I think the major thing is that Montenegro always have been multicultural and multi-religion place, and that was the reason why Montenegro had one, I would say, very important place in that history, is that a lot of refugees come to Montenegro as they see it as a stable place, as a place, peaceful place where they can live and where they can rebuild their future.
Sure, and you also have a very considerable Albanian population. About 20% of the country is Albanian, right? Down in the south of Montenegro?
Well, I think a bit less, but in general, yes, a lot of Albanian. And there is a mix a lot of different nationalities in Montenegro. As I said, there are Serbians, there are Croatians, there are Albanians, there are Bosnians, and a lot. And this is something that is making Montenegro multicultural and multi-religion country. So I think that is something that put us away from conflict in history.
Yeah, I mean, that Montenegro was largely able to escape the fate of many other parts of the Balkans because of that, say, religious and cultural tolerance. What is the current state of the Montenegrin economy, and what, in your opinion, are the needed reforms?
Mm-hmm. Well, in 2006 we had some great ideas, and there was some great reform packages that I think that they were mostly pro-liberal oriented. But nowadays, I think it's not the case, because mostly the new government is focused on some social benefits and providing free services, which I think are putting a lot of burden on this country, and also on private enterprises. And in general, there's now, I think, slowly Montenegro is sliding to a socialistic country. Well, why I'm saying this? Because the recent laws that were adopted in the parliament of Montenegro are suggesting us that we are slowly sliding to the socialism. Because some of them I will mention here, but there was a law that approved centralization of urban planning in Montenegro, where government and of Montenegro will decide for urban planning on coastline, and they on that way they managed to I will say break the rule that was put by European Union and the European Self-Government Act. Also, there are some new laws that are suggested and that are still on voting, but mostly they are oriented to control the private enterprises, especially, for example, in taxi industries. And this is something that is very bad, and that is, I can say that they are ruining competition.
Sure, Uber.
They're ruining free market.
And Uber is banned in Montenegro because the taxi unions, the taxi cartels are very powerful. Tell us about the ruling party, which is the Democratic Party of Socialists, and are they a socialist party, a democratic socialist party, or are they, when we were talking earlier, you said they might actually be somewhat inclined to some more liberal economic ideas?
Yeah, well, in general, it is interesting, because I think the Democratic Party of Socialists is a group of people that have two different spectra of thinkings. For example, there is one part that I can say that is associated with Mr. Milo Djukanovic, which is more pro-liberal oriented. And those people who were in his government were mostly, well, I could say that there were some very pro-liberal people who put a lot of great reforms and a lot of great laws that would improve and current economy of Montenegro. The other part is nowadays government, which is led by Mr. Duško Marković, which I can say it's a more socialistic. So in general, that is the reason why nowadays we have those laws which from one side are promoting centralization, and on the other side they're killing Montenegro competitiveness on global market, because there are also some laws that they adopted recently that literally promoting them as socialist. So I can say there are two sides in their party.
And Djukanovic is very pro-EU in his orientation, very pro-Western. Is that correct?
Well, I can say that yes, his beliefs are pro-Western, but also I think all the other peoples in democratic parties or socialists are oriented pro-Western.
Where
so I couldn't say that one side is pro-Western, one is pro-Eastern, but I think both are well. I can say they approve the pro-Western European Union integration that we are approaching.
Where is Montenegro's kind of a very interesting case with its geopolitical and foreign policy alignment? Clearly, the Montenegrin government has aspirations of joining the EU. I believe Montenegro has already joined NATO. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
member in June.
And it's some political commentators have kind of seen the hand of the United States in the independence referendum. Serbia traditionally is more aligned with Russia, and some think that Montenegro is more, say, aligned with the EU and the United States. How do you see Montenegro playing into this kind of East-West power struggle?
Well, in general, I think in 2006 there were, when it was a referendum, we had two options, yes or no. And the yes option was at the beginning they said that they will promote pro-Western values and that Montenegro will be on their way to the European Union and to NATO, and they were open for it. On the other side, the option no was a bit unclear on that matter, and they didn't have an official link with any with or pro-Western or pro-Eastern values. But in general, I think for Montenegro was a great to choose to create a country of the pro-Western values. It was very useful for the people in Montenegro. The only thing that I think we made a mistake is that we started to adopt some laws that are against our country, well, at least against our competitiveness, and the other ways, in one way we became a blind followers, which is, I think it can be disaster for our economy and for our people. In that sense, I could say that maybe in one point of Montenegro independence, we lost our strategy. So in general, I think it's one of the major problems.
Now, I read recently a post that you wrote on the SFL website, and one of the interesting things you discussed is that young people in Montenegro today see a career in public administration as kind of a step up, and entrepreneurs in Montenegro almost have kind of a guilt by association because they're associated with, say, kind of even kind of organized crime or something like that. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, the problem we are facing now, as I said in that post, is we are a small country but big government. We have a huge public administration, which is around 90,000 people who are working for public administration in a country of 600,000 people, which is, I think, is pretty high. And a lot of students are seeing their career in public administration. No matter what they will do, they see them there, and that is something that is very very problematic. For example, on some surveys we did, every second student in Montenegro would like to work in public administration, and that's a big problem because on the other side, entrepreneurs and people who are creating private enterprises are considered to be criminals. And mostly this is a problem that is, I think this problem exists in all Western Balkan countries, and this is consequences from the war, where we had war profiteers who later established private enterprises, and people are associating people who has private enterprises as with those criminals.
Sure.
Yeah.
The wartime, the infamous wartime profiteering in the early '90s in Bosnia and Croatia and so forth. Tell us about the work that you're doing as an economist and as a political activist in Montenegro. What you're involved in several different organizations there.
Yeah, something in 2015 I founded Montenegro Institute for Liberty. At that moment, to be honest, I wanted to open institute, but I thought that it would maybe be better to create something for students, something for young people, to introduce the idea of libertarianism, as it was pretty unknown for our society. And we wanted to work on some public policies and to work on some laws from the perspective of libertarians and young people who are living here and who would like to change some things on better. And I think we had a lot of success in that, and that is why I was encouraged to open the institute recently, and not only to create a Montenegrin institute, but also an European, which I think it is very. I think it is very needed now in Europe, because all Europe, I can say that it is in some crisis. And the Lucha Institute is something that is European pro-liberty research hub. Our mission is to gather all the young prospective researchers who are pro-liberty oriented and who would like to work on analyzing public policy in their country, and to put them in one network where we can cooperate and bring some changes in European society. Something that we have strived to is free and prosperous Europe.
What is the future of the libertarian movement in Montenegro in particular and in the Balkans in general? Where do you see the movement headed, particularly with these economic issues, reducing the size of government, promoting free trade, and promoting entrepreneurship?
Well, in general, I think we have strong arguments and strong foundation. The only problem I can see, and something that I'm discussing with people around, is that there is a weak communication with people. I think people don't understand ideas yet, and mostly of them do not go deeper in it. And I think libertarian movements just need to raise this issue and to work more on communicating with people, to communicate and to transfer ideas of libertarianism, which I think people will see that they're benefiting each individual. In general, I could say that, and I'm always saying that Western Balkans countries are fertile soil for libertarianism, and that something that I'm suggesting now and I'm working on is to create some Western Balkans alliance where we can work together, because I think we have same culture, we have same problems, and I think our cooperation could bring us a lot more than we can do individually in each country. So definitely I think there is a future, but we need to be smart, we need to cooperate, and we need to communicate better with citizens.
Great. I mean, the future does look bright indeed, and the republics of former Yugoslavia have so much going for them, particularly in terms of history and culture, food, geography, and they're, more than anything, they're just beautiful places to visit as well, as I saw firsthand. We've been speaking with Slobodan Franeta, economist from Montenegro. Slobodan, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll look forward to updates on the work you're doing in the future.
Thank you, David.
All right.
Sending regards to your audience.
Do widzenia.